Hi, this presentation defines information literacy in detail. It also illustrates a few examples of individuals who used information literacy skills to get something done. Have you ever heard this term or phrase before you came to college? Admittedly, it is not the most common idea out there. We know that literacy is the ability to read and write. When connected with another word or modifier, it describes basic competence in that skill or area. For example, computer literacy describes a basic ability to use a computer, navigate the internet, and other online skills. In that spirit, information literacy involves a basic ability to know when and how much information is needed, be able to find it, evaluate it, and use it ethically and effectively to get something done. Many people look at information in the broad sense of including computer literacy, research skills, critical thinking, and information ethics. In this class, we will touch on and teach you things in each of these areas, while emphasizing searching skills with library resources and critical thinking in terms of evaluating what you find. It is useful to understand the distinctions between data, information, and knowledge. We will go into a bit more detail, but briefly, these pictures capture the main differences among these three ideas. Data consists of numbers, temperatures, times, and individual facts, similar to what you might gather in a scientific laboratory. Information interprets or conveys those facts in a meaningful way and can be found in books, articles, emails, and websites. Knowledge is a debatable concept, but I like to think of it residing within individuals after they have read, interpreted, analyzed, compared, and basically processed information, including information from personal experience. The difference between information and knowledge is debatable and debated. We talk about how all the books and all the libraries in all the world contain the knowledge of the world, but how do we know that knowledge until we read all those books? Until then, isn't it still information? However, the difference between information and data is clearer. It is related to the difference between primary and secondary sources. As an aside, a student once posted the following quote by Miles Kington to the online forum discussion: "Knowledge is knowing a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad." Primary sources are sources directly associated with their producer and the time period in which they are created. Secondary sources, on the other hand, are analyses and interpretations based on primary sources. Let's think about the data historians collect and work with regularly, such as dates, times, places, and people's names. The original data for historians can be found in the primary sources, such as letters, diaries, journals, and memoirs. Every academic discipline also has its history, so they all have letters, emails, memoirs, journals, websites, etc. to help them write their own history. In the humanities, the data may consist of the character names, the settings, the plots, the authors' names, etc. that can all be found in the text. For example, in the Harry Potter books, Hermione, Ron, Harry, Voldemort, magic horcruxes, spells, and potions are all part of the data, as well as the recurring plot line wherein the evil wizard Voldemort keeps trying to kill Harry in nearly all of the novels. In the social sciences, data is collected with surveys, opinion polls, and case studies. For example, a telemarketer may want to know how you might vote on a particular issue and ask a number of questions. Your responses would be part of the overall data of everyone's responses. What kind of data might a scientist gather in the laboratory? Controlled laboratory experiments often look at things like time elapsed, measurements, temperatures, and so forth. All of this data goes in the notes. As we can see, data are different in each academic discipline. I know the grammar of that statement sounds funny, but data is plural because it is referring to all the little details. Just like the details in the daily routine of a nurse who collects individuals' temperature, weight, pulse, respiration rate, and blood pressure is different from a business owner's attention to sales, profits, invoices, and customers. So are the details in each discipline different. Information is the same in every academic discipline. At least the form in which it is presented is the same. Each discipline creates information and shares it in books, articles, and websites. Information is true to everyone. It's everywhere. For example, if I say that the city of Pocatello is in eastern Idaho, that is a fact everyone could agree with. Next comes misinformation. It's true to the sender, but not for the receiver. That is spam, poor directions from someone, or time of a concert, to name a few examples. To elaborate, telling someone that this Friday's concert begins at 6 o'clock when it actually begins at 7 o'clock could be considered misinformation if you believed that it really did start at 6 o'clock. Misinformation is not malicious or intentional. The sender was either misinformed about the correct time of the concert or has trouble keeping dates and times straight, confusing Thursday's event with Friday's in this example. A lie is considered to be disinformation. It is false for the sender and true to the receiver. Propaganda spread by governments falls within this category as well, as information that politicians want us to believe that they know to be false. Any lie that is believed is disinformation. The Watergate scandal in the 1970s included a lot of disinformation. Information that is not shared with others may also be disinformation, such as an asbestos report on the harm of asbestos to respiratory system suppressed in the 1930s. Not sharing the information allowed the asbestos companies to say their product was not harmful or avoid the issue altogether. As you might guess, disinformation can be both malicious and intentional. Non-information is an obvious lie that everyone recognizes. If I say Pocatello is a metropolitan city with millions of people and perfect year-round weather, then I would know it to be false, and so would everyone else who lives in eastern Idaho. It seems that comedians often produce a lot of laughs by sharing non-information that appears to be true, yet everyone knows they are false. Many jokes fall under this category. Can you think of any that would be appropriate to share in the forums? Finding information efficiently means being able to find what you need quickly without a lot of work, so you do not waste time. In practice, even the most experienced and practiced information professionals have difficulties finding certain kinds of information. Some of this difficulty is a result of everyone else owning the information item. The best and most valued information often costs lots of money. By the way, some of the best information professionals are reference librarians who sit at reference desks hoping to assist students with their research needs. You can always call the desk if you cannot visit. The number is 208-282-3152 for the ISU reference desk in Pocatello. Using information responsibly means knowing how to look at information, interpret it accurately, determine its quality, and select the parts or bits of information that are needed to get something done. For example, most people know not to let certain household chemicals remain within reach of little children. The information on these containers often warned consumers to do just that. When we keep copyright laws by not copying or sharing articles, music, or movies, for example, and when we recognize and properly cite the ideas of others, we are using information responsibly. Many people are not aware that what constitutes plagiarism or when they break copyright laws, but ignorance will not keep someone from dealing with the legal or academic consequences associated with these behaviors. Documenting information accurately is a way of sharing that information, so other people can also find it and use it. We will give you practice in each of these areas throughout the semester. Mastery of these skills does not come in a day, but with continued practice. So be patient with yourself and don't give up. One of my colleagues divides information literacy into 3 main parts, with other points below these. I usually like to separate them into 5 categories, but I still think it is useful to review these 3 main parts. First comes efficiently finding information needed, which includes 3 smaller parts. Articulating a need means finding out and being able to explain how much and what kind of information is needed. English instructors usually define this for students by setting assignment requirements that say how many sources, pages, or types of information are needed. Finding and searching retrieval tools involves knowing where to go to get answers. In college, that might mean searching databases and library catalogs. Finding information resources means finding and recognizing the books, articles, or websites when you see them in the databases or on the bookshelves in the library. Responsibly using information found means not only knowing information rights, but also knowing information responsibilities. This means evaluating and understanding the information appropriately. If we cite an older source, then we should justify why we think the information it contains is still relevant. Accurately documenting information used translates into citing and referencing information resources so that others can find them and reconstruct the research. Sharing the correct information about the resources we have used with others will increase our credibility and give proper acknowledgement to the original authors. College professors appreciate a well-documented list of references. When finding information, it is important to know the extent and nature of information needed. Another way of saying this is that before we sit down to search Google or an academic article database, we should understand what we are looking for and how much of it we need. Do we need a scholarly article, or will an article from a national newspaper be enough? Do we need 5 articles or just 1? Next comes selecting the most appropriate investigative methods or information retrieval systems. Should we talk to an expert, search an academic article database, or go to an internet search engine like Google? To find information information, we can construct and implement effectively designed search strategies. Think about keywords and connecting them with special commands called Boolean operators. Also consider talking to a librarian or professional in the field to learn where they would go to find the answers. Retrieving information online or in person using a variety of methods involves knowing how to find organized information resources. Refine the search strategy if necessary. Our first attempts often do not work perfectly. Trying different searches may bring back even better search results. Finally, when finding information, we must extract, record, and manage the information and its sources. Keeping track of what you find is not always easy, but taking the time to print, save, or make notes may very well save you time later. Assignment 1 asks that you illustrate a time in your life when you have used information literacy skills. Let me model this for you. I have a fence around my backyard that needs to be stained or painted every few years, or it starts to look gray and run down, similar to the fence in this picture. When I see the fence looking more weathered, then I know it's time to paint it again. This is part of the articulating a need portion of information literacy. It involves knowing when you need information. Taking time to think about how much paint and what kind of paint is also part of this step. If I do not know the answers, then I need to identify some information resources that have the answers. Personally, I like to talk to people to find my answers. So I like to go to the hardware store and talk with employees who have experience doing these kinds of projects themselves. People can be information resources. They can sometimes tell me things I need to know. With projects like these, I often feel like a fish out of water, so it does not hurt to ask them, what else do I need to know that I have not considered yet? At the store, I can look for the paint section. Knowing that a hardware store is organized into lumber, paint, lawn, hardware, and other sections is helpful, so I know what to look for when I get there. Understanding that indoor and outdoor paints are generally separated from one another is also beneficial. If I keep information or old paint cans from the last project, then I can just look for similar labels with the semi-transparent cedar paint I need. As a consumer, I understand that anything in the store is for sale, so I have a right to buy the paint I choose, as well as pick the quantity or number of cans. Incidentally, as citizens in our country, we have the right to access information as a result of the Freedom of Information Act. As a responsible consumer, I should read the label on the paint cans and follow any instructions they have. I should evaluate the information they provide, so if it says to apply when outdoor temperatures are between 50 and 90 degrees for best results, that is when I should paint the fence. In the academic world, we use information wisely when we consider the authority, the accuracy, the currency, the purpose, and the relevance of the information we are using. We avoid using information that is outdated if we are working on an issue of current interest. This semester we will talk about the theory of documentation, which includes knowing the two parts of documentation. Citing information in the body of your writing is one part of documentation, while documenting the full information about a source at the end of the paper is the second part. There are three citation systems, one of which uses parenthetical statements in the body of writing. There are four reference formats. MLA and APA style formats are representative of two such formats. On this slide, we will discuss the 5 information literacy competency standards as they are defined by college and research librarians. We have talked about the first one. It is about determining the nature and extent of information needed. Second, the information literate student accesses needed information effectively and efficiently. In some places, you may see that the third standard is divided into 2. Information literate students evaluate information and its sources critically and incorporate selected information into one's knowledge base and value system. In other words, they pick out the most relevant pieces of information for later. Fourth, an information literate student uses information effectively to accomplish a specific purpose. Sometimes I think this fourth standard should be the fifth one, because the fifth one explains how an information literate student understands economic, legal, and social issues surrounding the use of information and uses the information ethically and legally. This information should be taken into account while using information to get something done. In another effort to illustrate the 5 main parts of information literacy, please indulge me as I explain a personal experience of my own. I like the idea of making homemade presents for my children. This last Christmas, I wanted to make something for my kids. In my childhood, we had a homemade Chinese checkers board, and I thought that was something I could do. I asked myself, what do I need and how much? First, I needed a board, so then I wondered where I could get one. I have a friend who works at a cabinet making shop, and they sometimes have scrap wood. Before asking him, though, it seemed like a good idea to think about the size of board I needed, so I guessed. After Christmas, my friend and I finally met, and he was able to give me a board with the dimensions I needed. To this point, I have illustrated the first standard of what kind and how much information I needed. Next, I need to plan how I would make it into a Chinese checkers board. Going to Google seemed like second nature, so I entered keywords like Chinese checkers board pattern, or the smart search function supplied the keywords so that I could click on them as I needed as I typed them in. The first result looked very promising. It provided the dimensions for the board, so I measured the board we had cut. Fortunately, we had a ruler with metric measurements. My friend said we could always add to the board to make it bigger if we needed, but the dimensions were good, so I moved forward. This part focuses on standards 2 and 3, searching for and evaluating information effectively and efficiently. In reality, the 5 parts of information literacy often intermix with each other because evaluation occurs with every step of the process. After finding the information, I read the instructions, printed out the pattern with my beautiful wife's help, taped the two-page pattern to the window to line up the circles. The standard 8.5 by 11-inch piece of paper is too small for the pattern. Secured the pattern to the wood board with tape and began punching holes into the board with a nail and hammer. Dozens of holes later, I was done. Next came the drilling part. With the holes in the board, I knew just where I needed to drill. When I tried using the wide drill bit, however, it did not work. Apparently, the drill bit I selected only widens already started holes and does not really make new holes. That is where the project stands today, as of this recording. I need to either go buy a different drill bit or see if I can borrow one that works better from a friend or family member. This slide illustrates incorporating selected information into my knowledge base and also using information to get something done. True, my project is not technically done, but it is partially. Hopefully you can illustrate a project or thing you have finished that required you to understand what and how much information you needed, required you to search for information, demanded evaluation and incorporation of the information you found, and then you made a decision, completed a project, or bought something. Remember to say that you did the thing you set out to do. This is one of the standards. Number 4 or number 5, depending on your preference. Here's the board I have that still needs to be drilled, sanded, and sealed. Did you realize that I left out one of the standards in my illustration? Standard 4 talks about the understanding of social, economic, and legal issues surrounding the use, creation, and sharing of information. In my example, I relied on a friend to get my hands on a board of wood. Sociologically speaking, this dependence did not really work out very well because each of the times I texted my friend did not work for coming to get the wood, so that delayed my project. Economically speaking, I asked my friend because I hoped to save a little money by getting some scrap wood rather than going to the lumber or hardware store. Also, in our society, it is common knowledge among many that we can find quick answers and instructions to day-to-day questions on the internet. So using Google is accepted as a place where lots of information, particularly mundane information, is shared for free, though lots of information is only accessible if you pay for it. Thank you for your time and attention to this presentation. Keep in mind that when you illustrate a time in your life when you used information literacy skills in your own life, that you do not need to go into as much detail as I have, though you do need to write 2 to 3 paragraphs that cover all the 5 main standards as outlined in the information literacy document. Let us know if you have any questions, otherwise we will see you in the forums.